There are various reasons for why you would play a video game and why you would prefer it to other media, like watching a film or maybe reading a book and so on. People play video games for different reasons. You may only play games for its competitive side, so you enjoy the technical difficulty of mastering a skill, becoming competent and proficient in that specific game. Or on the other hand, you may enjoy a good story, a good atmosphere, and play a game that's able to let you completely immerse in its narrative. But whatever the reason, one of the elements that distinguish the video game medium to other mediums and the fundamental difference that video games have compared to other media is its interactivity, the ability to interact with what's happening on screen. But some may say, and this is especially true for very narrative-focused games, more so when the gameplay elements are very few. Let's think, for example, at the various Telltale games or at Life is Strange and similar games, that the only thing a player does is just press buttons to make what the developers have created unfold. So your only role is to make happen what other people have already decided and programmed. And although that may be true or may sound logical from a reasoning perspective, the reality is that playing a game, for example, even in games where the gameplay elements are very thin and not much present, there is a difference, a fundamental difference, I would say, when we compare video games to, for example, watching a film that could be seen as the closest thing to playing a game, minus the interactive part. This is obviously personal, but when I watch a film, I'm always aware that there is a difference between me and the characters and the story in general that's being portrayed in that specific film. Although I may empathize with the protagonist and the various character and understand and accept their motives and so on, there is always a distance between me and them. Vice versa, when I play a video game, even in the cases in which the protagonist has a name and specific personality traits, compared to games like the various Bethesda games, in which the protagonist is generally a white canvas on which the player can portray himself or herself. But in both cases, you feel like you're actually the one making decisions. You're the one actually living that moment. You forget about the fact that it is a game and that human beings have coded and thought about that game and its story, and you're just living what they created. So you're basically playing in a confined box. What can and will happen is already determined beforehand. Nonetheless, you can help yourself but feel in control of what's happening. Obviously, a good storytelling is necessary to empathize and to be able to completely feel the video game. Nonetheless, this is for me a fundamental difference from, for example, a film, and the reason why, from an immersion standpoint, video games are the best at doing this. Even, for example, in a game like The Last of Us, in which you have Joel and Ellie that are characters with their own minds and souls. They have specific traits, and if you understand them, you are able to, in hindsight, sort of know what they will do and say in specific situations. So there are characters written by someone that have specific traits and characteristics. Nonetheless, when you're playing the game, there is this interesting thing that's going on by which you both feel as Joel because you play as him from a gameplay perspective. At the same time, you feel as a third person roaming around alongside Joel and Ellie, sort of a third friend taking in what's going on and living those moments. And maybe in other games, like for example in Skyrim, you generally feel as the protagonist, and that's it. You don't feel as sort of a companion to the protagonist. At least that's for me, because there aren't enough information to that character to make it an individual being with specific traits and elements to its character. So you take the place of that vessel. Interaction is also what makes you feel bad about specific actions you take in video games and specific choices you make in video games. It's what makes you sometimes not be able to sleep for a choice and something you did or maybe said to other characters in a game, even after days have passed. I think in this sense, books are more similar to video games than films are. This may seem counterintuitive because a film has audio cues and visual cues. And as I said, the only element we could say that's missing is the interactive part. But at least for me, giving you the audio and visuals of something without giving you the ability to interact with those elements makes it more impersonal and you feel more separate with what's being told. You are aware that that's a film, Vice versa, in books, you generally have to use your creativity to think about the various characters, and sometimes you have to also fill in the gap in the various characters' personality, and in a way you contribute to developing that character. And obviously you also think about the various locations. You have to imagine the various locations, how everyone is dressed, what's their tone of voice, how they look, what's their nonverbal demeanor, and so on. So the fact that a lot of it is up to your imagination, and so you have an active part, you're actively creating something. That's the reason why, at least for me, I feel more in tuned with the characters and with the protagonist of a book, more so than in films. A specific example that made me think about this was a side mission in Prey, the video game Prey from Arkane Studios. And in this one side quest, there is this character that's called Mikaela, if I'm not mistaken. And as you're doing, your various missions near the end of the game, you find her in this place of the spaceship, and she's basically almost dying for a lung disease, if I recall correctly. And she asks you to find her medicine that's in her cabin, but the cabin has been damaged, making it directly in contact with the outer space, let's say. And so there's also the risk that you won't be able to find said medicinal. And as you're playing the game and you're almost at the end of the game itself, for those who've played Prey, you know that like the final missions are very intense, or they require your attention and also your time. So they seem, from a narrative perspective, very time sensitive. So you're prone to do them quickly and go forward and always do the next mission. And also this Mikaela is, a crew member, yes, but I've never seen her before. I don't know who she is. And I could just leave her there and never think about her again. She's just a character in a video game, and after I close my PlayStation, she will just disappear. But I sat there, looking at her and felt this impulsive need to help her and to do whatever I could, save the most people possible in that spaceship. So the most crew members of that spaceship, to let them be able to return to Earth safely. And so I rushed to get her medicinal, and she then gets the cure and all ends up well. But I ended up thinking about this interaction for hours after I closed the game, because my reaction to it was so instinctive. I could have just easily went forward, also because I was playing for a while, so I was a little bit fatigued. But nonetheless, there was something in me that clicked, and I just turned back and rushed to find her cabin and the medicine she needed. So all this to say that video games are cool and can be a great experience, and all this talking in this video is sort of let's say a love letter to video games in general, and how powerful and exciting they can be. So yeah, that's all I had to say. Please share some of your best moments and intense moments in video games. Share your most intimate experiences while playing games, and also like your favorite game, if that's not a problem for you. And see you next time.